Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. And most importantly, thank Jeff for taking what is a very rare night off to come and spend time with us. He obviously performed for us on Sunday and tore the place down as per usual. And while he should be sleeping and relaxing, getting ready for the next set of the tour, he's here, come to chat with us. Can you all hear and see and you're all happy? If not, like move around, get funky, get close to the person next to you. We're all friends. So I'm going to ask Jeff a few questions, get this ball rolling. I'm going to turn my phone off and then we'll open it up. We've got a radio mic in the front that we're just going to pass around to anyone that wants to ask a question. So, you started spinning pretty young, from what I've heard. How old were you? How did you get into it? Who were your kind of early influences?
Well, I started when I was about 10. And it was a little bit different because it wasn't like I started mixing or any of that stuff, because that was so early. For me, it was just more so being a guy in the neighborhood that provided the music, you know, when anybody had a house party. Sure. So you had your 45s and you would just bring your box of 45 down and you would literally play one, and when it went off, you would pick the needle up, take it off, put the next one on, and play that.
So a selector.
That's it. That's it. So it started there. So it wasn't so much of an influence that made me want to start. It was just kind of like, I thought it would be cool to be the guy that played all the tunes.
And they were your records, or where did they come from?
Well, they were pretty much my brother's records. He was very big into funk, soul. This was pre-hip-hop. So he was really big into just funk and soul music. So, you know, he would just let me borrow his records, and I would play them. As long as I didn't scratch them and brought them back with the cover, I was good for the next one.
But then you obviously got into DJing. There was a pretty healthy kind of scratch battle scene in Philly at the time, I guess, with the likes of you and Cash Money. And did you guys know each other at the time, hang out with each other, practice together, battle each other? Like, what was it like in Philly at that time?
That was a really big jump. It was kind of like the party scene really exploded in Philly. Like, it was a DJ on every corner. Everybody wanted to be a DJ or wanted to be an MC.
What brought that about, like that shift?
That might have been about 84, 85. And you know, there were the key places that you would go and play, and the key promoters that would bring you to go play. It was every Friday and Saturday, so it was something to do. And Cash actually didn't live in Philadelphia. He lived a little bit outside of Philadelphia. And I was actually on the scene a little bit before he was. And then when he came, you know, like I said, all that does is just brings a lot of healthy competition. We never it was never a thing of battling. I think more, it was kind of like, okay, Cash does the Wynn Ballroom on Friday, Jeff does the Hotel Philadelphia on Saturday. It was just always something really good. And him and I weren't the only two. It was a bunch of really good DJs in Philly at that time.
Such as?
Oh my God, it was Guy Lightning Rich. It was the original Spin Bad. It was Cosmic Kev, who's still around now. It was Grandmaster Nell. You know, it's funny because these guys were just as big as, you know, guys like me and Cash, you know, at that time. You know, and it was a radius. You know, it was kind of like you were known in South Jersey, you were known in Delaware, you were known you know, pretty much in Philadelphia.
And Cash has been credited with turning the turntables around, like battle style as it were.
Yeah.
And when I had Questlove spinning with us, he was talking to me about having a deck set up Philly style, where they're both one side of the mixer. Does that make sense?
No, that's not Philly. That's not Philly style.
Don't blame me, blame Questlove.
Cash was the guy that started turning the turntable sideways. You know, I had never seen anybody do that. And the funny thing is, I was really late on turning mine sideways. I was so used to, because you know what it is. I used to needle drop a lot. Like, I was really fast at catching records with just dropping the needles, and it's very hard to drop the needle with the tone arm at the top. So until I was ready to kind of give up needle dropping, you know, because there were so many more advantages that you can do with turning the turntables like Cash turned. You know, I was really late on that. Now I have to correct that. Most of the DJs in Philly, which was very weird to me and Cash, spun with the turntables on one side.
So what it is like you've got the mixer on one side and then both turntables would be on one side of the mixer, rather than having a turntable either side and the mixer in the middle. They were both either on the left or on the right, I guess, depending on which hand you're more dexterous with.
And that was just weird to me.
It was weird to me as well. When Questlove turned up and was like, yeah, we need to move the turntables across.
Yeah, he still plays like that.
Alright.
It's like, okay. Say so.
Horses and courses. And the Philly music scene itself, with like Philadelphia International, Schoolie D, did those kind of things have an influence on you and your sound?
Well, I mean, that was all around the same time, you know, with Schoolie D. You know, the Philly International sound, or just that whole movement had an impact on everybody, because it was almost kind of like growing up in Detroit during Motown, that, you know, you don't realize that all of these big records that are coming out of Philly are being played all around the world, because we're not going around the world, we're solely in Philly. So we're used to that, you know, and having those Thanksgiving or Christmas mornings when Kenny Gamble would get on a radio station and be the guest DJ, we were used to that, not realizing that that was a super treat, because, you know, he would play stuff that was unreleased, and, you know, just talking about the experience of, you know, Philly International, you didn't really appreciate that until we kind of got a little bit older. But I mean, you know, it was kind of like in Philly, it was I want to say Eddie D, who was on Pop Art, and then you had the Steady B and the Schoolie D's, and, you know, it was a hip-hop scene that was growing in Philly, you know, basically because everything that we knew about hip-hop was in New York. And I even tell people, with the whole DJ culture being what it was in Philly, was basically how we thought it was in New York. We thought New York was everybody loved the DJ, and it was the exact opposite. It was in Philly, the DJ was the prominent one, and the MC just big up the DJ. And in New York, it was switched around, that it was kind of like the DJ was the guy who played the background, and it was all about the MC.
Philly got it right in my mind.
That's right.
The DJ.
That's right.
So, production credits on like the early albums aren't like super clear. So, I wanted to ask, when did you start making beats? How much did you have to play in albums like this, like musically, you know?
Well, that's a whole nother issue.
Credits, right?
I mean, I started making beats 1980, you know, just getting the drum machine. Once you kind of understood how some of these records were made, you know, it started off with a Mattel Sensonic drums. And, you know, it went to, you know, you try to find $200 to buy a Roland 606. And if you were daring and wanted to try to learn how to program, you bought a 303 and synced the two together so you could play bass lines. There was a guy, if any of you get a chance to search the internet, it was a guy in Philadelphia who was probably one of the biggest notorious graffiti writers, but he went by the name of Kid Destroyed. And Kid Destroyed was probably 25 years before his time, because at a time when everybody would DJ and come with records, Kid Destroyed come came with a guitar case, and when you opened up the case, it was 3 Roland 606s, 2 303 bass lines. It was a little mixer, a little keyboard, and a speaking spell, and a Merlin. And I don't know if you know what the Merlin game was. It's like 4 colors that when you hit the color, it lights up, and then you hit 2, and then you have to follow it. And he would do, he could do the entire party with beats that he made. He would use the speaking spell to spell things out. Like, it was the most incredible thing that I've ever seen in my life. But he was the guy that made me want to grab a drum machine, because, you know, it was kind of like before then, you had no idea how people were making these records, and this guy would show up and basically make these records in front of you. So, you know, just from learning how to program and, you know, making your own beats and kind of scratching on top of it, it was, you know, when Will and I got together, we used to perform Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble off of Moments in Love. Like, I would play Moments in Love, and he would rap Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, and I would watch everybody sit there with their mouth hum on every word that he said. And I basically went and programmed a beat to Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble. I threw the I Dream of Jeannie speech in, because it wasn't like you could sample, so I had to play it in and play it out. And he took the demo tape to a record company and came back, and next thing you know, these 2 guys were sitting in my mom's basement telling me how they wanted to put out the record. And, you know, back then you just kind of like, man, listen, I'll be able to tell my kids one day I made a record. Like, none of this was a career, or, you know, this was kind of like, I got a job at Roy Rogers and I cook chicken, and, you know, this is just my side hobby, and I'll be able to tell my kids that we made records. So you go in the studio with the drum machine, you lay everything down. You didn't really understand how the whole production or the business side worked, because I wasn't trying to get into business. I was just trying to make a record that I could show my kids one day that their dad made a record. And it turned, you know, from 1 record to 2 records to, hey, let's do an album, you know, and it was weird, because it was kind of like the album came out, and it was kind of like, I looked at it, and it was kind of like, wow, produced by who? Who is this guy? You know, like, and then you know, and then you're asking, like, well, I'm not really understanding what a producer is, because I could have swore I did all of this shit. Like, I was trying to figure out, is somebody not telling me something? Like, is the producer the guy that said yes? You know, but no one kind of lets you know, and you kind of go along with that until it's kind of broken down, or not.
Yeah. So the wall was pulled over your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
So from there, we move on to Parents Just Don't Understand, which the first hip-hop record to get a Grammy. Did it feel like, yeah, exactly. Did it feel like at the time that you were like breaking down barriers, and that there was a noticeable resistance from the industry to hip-hop at the time? Or, I can't imagine like hip-hop was exactly welcomed with open arms, do you know what I mean?
Well, you know what, what was funny is, because it goes back to the first album and the first guys that we signed with. You know, at the end of the day, we were just happy to have a record out. We were doing some shows. You know, we kind of knew that we were never going to make any kind of money or do any kind of an impact, or have a kind of impact, you know, with these guys. And then we got a call one day that Jive Records, who was actually based in London, you know, wanted to sign us, or sign the record company that we were with. So we kind of looked at it like, okay, you know, this is cool. Houdini's on Jive. You know, it's a much bigger label. You know, hopefully we can get more exposure. So the guy
were like shit.
Yeah, like, so the guy actually signed the deal. So we went through our record company to Jive. And the funny thing is that he's the DJ on the Rapper album with Parents Just Don't Understand, was actually recorded in London. We spent a month in London and stayed at the Holiday Inn in Swiss Cottage. We recorded everything at Battery Studios in London. I think the entire month we only saw daylight 2 days, because we kind of kept on the same schedule of being back home. So we went in the studio pretty much about 5 o'clock in the evening, and we worked till about 5 o'clock in the morning. And we, you know, took the cab back to Swiss Cottage, got breakfast, you know, at 6 o'clock and went to sleep and woke up at, you know, maybe 2 and I made beats in the room and we went back over. We did that for a month. But in the middle of that process, we got a call that the original guy who had the label wanted to sell the label to Jive. So we knew this is going to be our greatest gig if this happens. So every day we would get a call, well, he wants more money. Well, he said, never mind. Well, no, he's going to sell it. He doesn't. And then we got a call. And, you know, that just basically meant that we went directly from the record label we were on straight to Jive. So we were really happy, you know, about that. But it was kind of like, you know, it was second nature. You know, Will and I go in and I'll make beats and he would write and we would do scratches. You know, the funny thing is half of the album was created at Holiday Inn Swiss Cottage. I had a production. You know, it's kind of like, hey, you know, and you know, and it's funny to think that because we didn't put too much thought process, and I don't want that to sound bad, but a lot of times I believe that putting your brain in your music is what messes it up. It needs to come from your heart. So, and when you're young and you don't have anything to lose, you know, you just kind of do it. So we were just making records and sampling and just doing everything. You know, I had no regard for the sample laws or anything like that. We paid for later, but you know, we just made this record. And I remember, you know, when we were mixing the record, one of the engineers in the room looked at us and said, "I think parents just don't understand it's a hit." And I was like, "I hate this record." Like, you know, and not that you hate it. It's kind of like this wasn't the record that I wanted to come out first on a double album, and we had all kinds of scratch records, and you know, it was kind of like, let's put out something, you know, that's harder. And he was just like, "I think Parents is just a hit." And it was just a general consensus, and I was like, listen, you know, it's something that we did, I don't care. And it came out, and it just, you know, it took off. We went on tour the week that it came out. And the crazy thing about that is before Facebook and your cell phone or just having instant access, you only know by what you read about what someone tells you. And especially back then, on tour, you didn't know anything. Because you would just take the bus, you would come into a city, and you go to the hotel, you go to sound check, you go eat, you come back, you do the show, and you drive to the next city. How we found out was every night when they would announce the lineup on the tour, and this was the Run DMC Raising Hell tour. This was, you know, Jazzy Jeff, Fresh Prince, Salt and Pepper, not LL Cool J, Public Enemy, EPMD, and Run DMC. So every time they would announce the lineup, the cheers would get louder. And Will would look at me like, "Did they cheer louder tonight than they did last night?" And one night in the middle of the tour, he was like, "I'm going to try something. If this shit don't work, we're going to look really bad." And the second verse of Parents, he told everybody that he was going to say the first line and let them say the second. And when he said, "I remember my mom took me school shopping," 25,000 people said the next line. And we just kind of looked at each other and was kind of like, shit's different.
And did you work your way up the bill of the tour? Or?
Yeah, but you know what, we didn't have to. It got to the point that, you know, the tour manager would come over and be like, we're gonna move you back a slot tonight. So we were like, okay. Like, we didn't care. You know, at that point in time, we just wanted to go out, you know, because, you know, the type of show that we had, we were one of the guys that had the show that didn't need records. You know, just, you know, because we had DJ Routines, we had Reddy Roxy, who was probably one of the greatest human beatboxers. You had Will, and we would just put together a whole show that people didn't necessarily have to hear your records to be entertained with the show. So we just wanted to perform. So we didn't care if we opened the show. You know, if we got people in here, we just want to do what we do.
And when did you hear the Grammy news, and did you realize how significant that was?
I mean, it kept getting bigger. You know, we came home. You know, the funny thing is that Raising Hell tour might have been for 3.5 months. We came home for a week and then went out on a tour, or went out and headlined our own tour, which I laugh about because Paula Abdul and New Kids on the Block opened up for us. Which a couple of years later, they went on tour with New Kids on the Block. And you know, they had just kind of got out of control. But it was just, you know, we went on our own tour, so it was, everything was just a blur. And then, you know, when they started announcing, you know, the American Music Awards and the Grammy nominations, and we found out that we were nominated, we were really happy. We went through a bad situation with the Grammys because we were happy that we were nominated. This was at a point in time where hip-hop really wasn't being respected like we felt that it should, because, you know, this is, you know, the most energetic, most popular music that's being played on the radio right now. This is the music that is selling the most amount of records, but, you know, yet still you had radio stations and old school jocks that were just like, this is a fad, this is gonna die, you know, don't pay any.
Yeah, the establishment wasn't yet ready to let it in.
Yeah, and you kind of feel disrespected because, you know, at some point in time, it goes from being a hobby to this is my job. This is, you know, like, we're impacting people. You know, I'm sitting there like, we've done shows in London, we've done shows in Japan, and you're sitting here telling me that my job is going to end because it's irrelevant. So you kind of take it personal. And then being 20-something doesn't help because you really think that you know everything and you're bad when you're 20. So, you know, when we found out that the Grammys said that they weren't going to televise the hip-hop portion, you know, it's kind of like, okay, we want you guys to come out, we want you guys to perform, but we want to give you your award in the daytime when nobody's here, just in case, you know, if you win. And we were like, well, we're not going to do it if you're not going to show it. You know, so we kind of made this stand, you know, which we kind of hoped that everybody else was going to back. And all of the other nominees backed us except Kumo D. And it was a shame because, you know, we were really, really close. So it just kind of put a little strain on the relationship for about 3 hours. You know, because he went to the Grammys and kind of made the speech, and, you know, his way of looking at it was, you know, this is a forum for hip hop, somebody should take it. And we were just kind of like, well, you know, I don't want to take crumbs, you know, if that's not what you're really owed and deserved. And it really panned out because, you know, the Grammy kind of opened the door and accepted, you know, and, you know, look at it now, it's kind of like the hip hop Grammys.
So also, just on the subject of parents don't understand, you're obviously a father yourself now.
Yes.
Do your kids have any perception of what it is you do and the influence you have and what your life is like kind of outside the home?
Well, my oldest definitely does. My oldest does. My next to the oldest, he is aspiring MC, so he kind of gets it. But, you know, they still get it because they kind of think it's a switch that you cut off, and, you know, it doesn't really work like that. You know, it's, you know, he'll come in the studio and, you know, and write half a verse and say, I want to go play Xbox, and I'm kind of like, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to finish it. But, you know, I had the privilege of my kids kind of growing up with me doing what I'm doing, so they didn't know anything else. You know, it was just kind of, you know, it was like, you know, dad has his job. You know, my son would say, you know, my dad's job is to get on an airplane. You know, because I just, you know, would be gone. But you know, it's kind of like keeping them in the loop of what's going on and telling them and explaining to them. You know, it's really cool when they kind of get it and start to understand it. And then it's just kind of like, you know, trying to manage the difficulty of not being there, you know, all of the time. Sometimes gets rough. You know, and even though that they understand that, you try to really make sure that the time that you spend with them is special.
Sure. But you are probably like one of the busiest DJs out there, so that balance of like travel and work and home must be like nigh on impossible.
Well, I mean, you know what it is? It's kind of like if I'm on the road, I'm on the road. If I'm not on the road, I'm home. I don't go anywhere. Right. You know, and just, you know, having your studio in your house and having, you know, it's just kind of creating an environment that you really don't want to go. You know, I tell everybody, my life goes from 100 miles an hour to nothing.
And so the Touches Jazz Studios are at home.
Yes.
You made music for too many people to mention. You DJed all over the world. Are you most recognized for that, or is it still Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince? And
I think it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
yeah.
You know, and it's
I don't know, I'd love to think this is a true story, but there's a story I heard about you being sat on a flight with the guy sat next to you, and the Fresh Prince was on the...
Yeah.
So the guy's sitting on the flight, and on the in-flight entertainment is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and the guy sat there going... I'm really trying to work out if he's seeing double or what's going on.
Music is very powerful. Music is something that so many people know you for. Music is absolutely nothing compared to television. I had 90-year-old white women coming to me saying jazz. They never said that as a DJ. So the power of TV was just something that you really didn't expect. And then what you understand is, as a DJ, you can't care why anybody likes you. You can't care why someone is into you. Your job is, if they're like, because I've had people come up to me and I have to keep a straight face because they're looking at me like, oh my God, I had no idea you DJ. You know, but if you can make them a fan after they see you, it doesn't matter if they knew you before or not. So just kind of turning that around to realizing that, you know, I'm somebody that I'm a huge champion for the culture. If I can make anybody understand what a real DJ does and what their job is, then that just benefits the culture. You know, sometimes you kind of find DJs that kind of want to be selfish and, you know, I did that and I do this. And I think that DJs, promoters, anybody, at the end of the day, the more promoters you have out there, the healthier the business is going to be. The more DJs that you have out there, you know, it's kind of like, if there was only one DJ and one promoter, I think both of them would die. You know, you kind of need, you know, people. So whatever you can do to kind of be a champion for your job only keeps your job.
So it doesn't matter to you the way they, their way in, as it were, like the way they found out about Jazzy Jeff, whether he's through the TV or whatever, as long as you can teach them
you gotta
who you are and what you do now.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, also in your production, I was listening to your My Faves mix that I downloaded off the site, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like classic acapellas by the likes of Biggie and stuff like that with beats that Jeff's made underneath. Which was making me think, do you have like a wish list of artists that you would like to produce for? If so, who's at the top of it? Are there people that you wish you'd had the opportunity to work with that is now passed away and too late, or?
You know, the funny thing about me as a producer, I am not the Pete Rock or the DJ Premier type of producer that can work with anybody. I am somebody, and this is probably why I haven't done a lot of stuff with a lot of people. I am somebody that I work the best when I can create a vibe with somebody. And that's a crapshoot. That's kind of like, you know, you can get somebody in and they're looking at you and you're like, yo, what's up, man? What you do last night? You know, I'm really, and I think it got like that because my introduction to making music was making music for Will. It wasn't making music for anybody else. That was my partner. That's, you know, I vibed with him. We had a way that we made music, a chemistry. So if it doesn't go like that, you know, I can't give you my best. I can make beats all day long, but I don't think somebody who just makes beats and somebody raps all the time that constitutes a producer.
Then are there things that are still there on the cutting room floor that, with particular artists, because there wasn't a vibe that's just never going to see the light of day? Or have you managed to like recycle the beats for someone else, or managed to at least get like a verse from it so you can use it on like a...
No, I mean, you know what, I have probably, no exaggeration, about 10,000 uncompleted projects. or songs, I should say, not necessarily projects. You know, I have 80% of an album I did with Rhymefest, which is incredible, that we just stopped and just, you know, because what people don't realize is sometimes it's not creativity, it's life. Sometimes life gets in the way. You know, I've had records with guys that were incredible, and, you know, I had a record with a guy that we were 3 songs away from finishing, and his grandmother caught him sneaking a girl in the house, and his grandmother kicked him out. And I mean, and it sounds funny, but it went from his grandmother kicking him out to him having to get an apartment, to him having to get a job to pay for the apartment, to us not having any time to go into the studio to finish because he had this job with this apartment, and then he meets a girl because he's lonely. The girl gets pregnant. Now he has a son. But people don't realize that life sometimes when you wonder why your favorite artist hasn't put out their music, sometimes it's life. You know, so I mean, it's, you know, you have these issues that sometimes it just doesn't see the light of day.
And how was it vibing with Bart Simpson? How did that come about?
That, you know what, that was one of those, you know what, we, you know, we like some of the Jazzy Jeff freshman stuff, and
who was it, like Matt Groening, that reached out person?
Yeah, and he was just like, hey, you know, I'm doing this album with the Simpsons, and
I take it you were a fan already?
Oh yeah, everybody's a fan of the Simpsons. Yeah. I had no idea how the album was going to come out, and it was just a little creepy because I really didn't want to know who Bart was. And then especially to find out that Bart was a girl.
So you had them like actually in the studio working? I got a weird, like weirdly similar story. I used to work for MTV many years ago, and when they had the Muppet Treasure Island, I think they were promoting, the Muppets came into the studio, and I was like, oh, please don't make me work in the studio today. I don't want to have like, you know, the mystery ruined, do you know what I mean? Of like the people with the sticks and stuff like that. I still wanted to like remember, you know, Kermit and Miss Piggy running around.
Like watching Bart go into the booth. You know, it was kind of like Bart got on the dress. Something up with Bart.
So some of this stuff I've already covered. I was gonna like chat to you about life on the road and DJing. Like, do you have any idea how many shows you do a year? How many weeks on the road? And
no,
would you?
I don't want to count.
No. And how many weeks, months, years of your life have you spent in airports?
A lot.
No doubt. When you're on the road and spinning in different places, it's something I chatted to Steve about in the club. Is what you play in Europe noticeably different to what you play back home? And does that again vary country to country and club to club? And
I don't really change what I play anywhere I go. I may have maybe 50 different types of sets that I can play. To get creative, what I'll do is I'll mix and match out of all of the 50. Like I'll play 5 here and go here, and I want to turn here and do that. But I grew up at a time when you followed your favorite DJ because you liked the musical journey he took you on. I think what I get mad now, you know, is so many DJs take you on the exact same journey. Now, there's a side of me that I can't get mad because a lot of times I get asked, what advice would you give to a new inspiring DJ today? And the hard part about that is the advice that I would give you probably wouldn't work today. Because I would tell you to be creative, I would tell you to be your own person, I would tell you to figure out what your niche is, I would tell you to, you know, play a little bit of everything. I would tell you to, you know, always throw a curveball. You know, it's to me, when you play a set and you walk out, people don't talk about the popular records you play, they talk about the curveball.
Toto Africa.
Yeah.
You fucking love that record. And all the guys that are like the residents of my parties and stuff like that, they're always cussing me when I play Toto Africa. And then when Jeff played it on Sunday night, I was like, see, I suddenly felt vindicated. You know what I mean? I was like, if it's good enough for Jeff, it's good enough for you fuckers, man.
But I mean, you know, it's just to tell people that in a world where, you know, and especially me coming from the U.S., where I can't stand to turn on the radio, you know, because there's no creativity. You know, there's the same records that are played over and over and over again. And then what that does, that to me is like the matrix to people, that they hear these records on their way to work. They hear these records listening to their phones at work. They hear them on the way home. And they get dressed and they go to the club and want to hear the exact same records. You know, you kind of get so programmed that you don't want to kind of reach out. So it's hard because, you know, the advice that I would give may not get you any work in the club.
But it's something I've always found interesting, like being a DJ and a music head and whatever else, is like that reaction of people, like, and it's totally understandable, I get it, like that they want to hear their favourite record and stuff like that. But to me, like the most exciting part of being in a club, and this has been like from day dot, is when I hear that record I don't know, that gets me amped, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck is that? Like, and the hunt is on, you know what I mean? And it's like,
that's it.
You know, if you're lucky enough, then, you know, the DJ will tell you, or if not, you know, you've got Shazam these days. But before that, you know, you had to like try and remember the lyric, or if it was a hip-hop tune, you had to try and remember the sample that was in it, or try and figure out, oh, it sounds like this guy, so you could try and like backtrack who it was. And to me, that was like the part of the party that would get me amped, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, and then you spend the next week finding it, and then finally you get your hands on the record, and you're like,
it was definitely an experience. I just think I am somebody that I don't mind any DJ playing anything that's popular. I just think you should play everything. I don't know anybody on earth that only likes one type of music. Like, and I felt it. Like you know. And I'm one of those guys that I can give you a list of EDM records that I love. I can give you a list of reggae records that I love, hip hop records, opera records. Like, I love music, you know. And like I said, I don't know anybody who's just like, I only listen to this kind of music and I don't listen to anything else. It's kind of like, you know, you have to expose people to a little bit of everything.
But I partly think that's something that's come about both in terms of being able to play everything, and partly people being more open-minded musically is something that's happened with the advent of technology. For us,
absolutely,
as DJs like Serato, I don't know who does and doesn't know about it, but it's like it's a DJ program. It reads your iTunes library. You play records exactly like you're playing records, but it means you're not limited to the 2 cases of records you took to the club. It means you can play literally anything you've got in your iTunes library. Also, the other flip side of that is that with the advent of the iPod and the iPod Shuffle, you're not limited to that, you know, one tape in your Walkman that you listen to all day. It means that I find that like modern crowds, especially like people considerably younger than ourselves, unfortunately, are as used to listening to Wu-Tang as they are listening to Coldplay, as they are listening to Sister Nancy, as, you know what I mean? It's like...
But I also think that's people getting so frustrated and tired of the radio that they're looking for other means. You know, and I tell people, there's good music out there. It's just not as accessible as turning on the radio and they're gonna play it. Like that's, you know, and I actually think that that's gonna be the decline of radio because, you know, I have a 14-year-old son that I don't think I can remember the last time he listened to the radio.
But by the same token, music's easier to find through like internet stations and SoundCloud and, you know, etc.
That's today's radio.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, YouTube, you name it. You've worked with Skillz for, I don't know how many years exactly, but
12 years.
Longer than most relationships. Does he always just have to feed off you, or is there ever any point in a set where what he's vibing on might influence what you play, or he's got like a certain vantage point in the club and can see what they're bugging out to and be like, yo, why not try this or whatever? Is it all just one-way traffic?
Well, Skillz can basically do whatever he wants. He just chooses not to. Skillz is, Skillz is a legend. We bumped into each other at Winter Music Conference one year, and he was just like, oh my God, I'm hearing that you're traveling all over the world. And I was like, yeah, it would be really cool if we did something together, because, the DJs that took out someone never took out someone who was known. So he was like, yeah, just let me know. And literally 4 hours after that, I was offered a Canadian tour. And I picked up the phone and I called him. It was just like, listen, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. And I said, well, I have this Canadian tour. I want to know if you want to go. And he was like, cool. Which was the weirdest thing, that the first show that I brought him out, people were just kind of looking, and it was just kind of like, is that Skillz? Like, because it almost looked like a hip hop concert.
Still like mad Skillz back then.
Yeah, it almost looked like a hip hop concert. And the way he just narrated the party, and we just, is by the time we got to the third show, it was people holding up his album cover, because it kind of went around that he was on the road.
And had you heard him host parties before? Because being a DJ that's hot on record or hot in the booth is very different skills. An MC that's hot on record.
That crazy.
It's a very different skill to being able to host a party. Do you know what I mean?
No, I didn't. That was just me taking a gamble to see what would happen. And and the funny thing is, the first night of Skillz and I doing a party together was better than any other night that I had with people that I was doing parties with before. So he naturally has it. I don't know too many MCs that has the knowledge of music like Skillz. Skillz is one of those guys that he will say that every lyric on Kendrick's verse, and he'll say every lyric on a Cold Crush verse, and everything in between. He knows every old soul record. He knows soulful house records. It's just, he's got a knowledge of music, and I think that's one of the things that makes it special, because you almost feel like you can go anywhere musically and he can go.
I think that is key. Like, I saw Prankster walk in Summit, and that's definitely one of the skills he's got and why he's got the Doctor's Orders gig.
Lastly, before I hand it over to you guys, I wanted to talk quickly about Vinyl Destination. For those that don't know, it's Jeff's video tour diary, I guess is the best way of describing it. It's kind of like when Jeff's out on the road, they film it, they cut it together so you can see what life is like for a jobbing DJ on the road. And I think it gives a really fair impression both of life on the road, yeah, like sitting in that shitty airports, for hours on end, but also like the banter amongst, you, Skillz, Verno, Steve, etc. So there's like a crew of them that travel together. Whose idea was it? How did it come about? And lastly, on the same thing, like, it's completely independent, it has no sponsors. What's the decision behind that? Because I imagine you've had people come and offer you like wedges of money, but you've decided to still, it's fully self-financed.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, I would always videotape on the road. I didn't always have a very good person videotaping on the road. Sometimes you would look at the footage and it would be my foot and just the ceiling, or you would see the camera going like this because the camera guy was too busy dancing. I actually met Christopher Schaefer, who actually did a video for Skillz. And that's how we met. Skillz was like, listen, I have this guy that he's going to shoot this video for us. And we did 2 shows in Las Vegas that I played on a Tuesday and I played on a Friday. I met Chris Tuesday. We all went to dinner, and there was nothing staged. We all went to dinner. We were sitting around eating dinner, and Chris was shooting, around, and he asked us to do a toast. We did a toast. And then he shot in the club. The record that Skillz was doing, in the middle of the night, without anybody knowing, I played the first verse, and Skillz kind of performed it, and then I went into another record, so no one knew we were actually shooting a video. And that Friday, I played the whole record And that was it. That's all I saw. And about a week later, when Skillz showed me the video, I was absolutely blown away at how much footage he got from, I'm looking like there's no way in the world this guy pieced together a video from what we just did. And everything was in there, the crowd shots. He took Skillz in the middle of the Las Vegas desert at sunrise and got the sun coming up. But the shots were just so beautiful, and it made me understand that not only could he shoot, but he had a great eye. So I ended up approaching him and saying, hey, would you like to come out on the road and just shoot some footage? And I kind of explained to him, what we do. The first tour was a tour of Asia, which, he ended up saying that he never met people who walked as much as we did. From the different countries that we went, and the footage, it definitely changed his life. And he actually came to me with the idea, come on, let's turn this into a show. Let's make this a show. Is many people that I've taken on the road that you can see in their eyes just how incredible of an experience this is. It's kind of like, let's try to give that to some of the people. Let's give it all. And the funny thing is his wife was the one that actually came up with the name Vinyl Destination. So he ended up, editing it down, and we kind of decided to make the episodes 15 minutes, just so it wasn't long and drawn out, and we just started posting them, and the response was just ridiculous. It just kept growing and growing and growing. We put them out every 2 weeks. And we were approached by a couple networks that really wanted to do it. My biggest issue is what you see on Vinyl Destination is nothing staged. We don't sit and say, okay, Jeff, go get something to drink and come back. He shoots it. He shoots it like it is. There's times that he'll put the camera in my face and I'll give him that look, like, get that shit out of my face. I'm tired, I haven't slept, I'm hungry, but I understand capturing that kind of makes people understand that everything on the road is not all good. It's really hectic. It's to realize that from the time I leave my house to the time I sit down on the bed in the hotel that I'm going to, 36 hours is gonna go by. And that's a long time when you have to sit there and look at your watch and go through customs and they ask you 1,000,001 questions and you're stuck in a bad seat and turbulence and nasty plane food. Now, but him capturing all of that. And my issue was the people that approached to kind of turn this into a show always wanted to script it. They want to script, because I don't mean to burst anybody's bubble, but every reality show that you look at on television is scripted.
I'd like to think they're not intelligent enough to
There's a producer, there's a screenwriter, and they tell you, like, these people aren't really fighting. They're told to fight, and they're told to be mad at each other, and just, and if you're born on a reality show, you get kicked off, because you gotta have some kind of drama, you gotta have somebody pregnant, or you shoot somebody, or you wear pink socks and don't tell people. You gotta have some kind of controversy. And that wasn't the reason why we did this. And then I just believe everything isn't supposed to blow up. Everything isn't supposed to be large and huge. Sometimes it's supposed to be what it is. And I think, just making a conscious effort that you wanted Vinyl Destination to be what it was, like I wanted to give a true and accurate account of what it's like, good and bad, touring the world. From missing your family to, who's going to eat the horse.
But that's kind of what I like about it, is that kind of truth to it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're 3 days deep without any sleep and you've just got off a 12-hour flight and it's 2 hours till showtime, and like it or not, you've got to put a smile on.
But you know what? But at the end of the day, it's the greatest job in the world.
Sure.
It's the greatest job in the world. I mean, it's as simple as realizing that your job is to make people happy through music. Period. There's no big explanation. I'm a this and I'm a turntablist and I'm a club DJ. My job is to make people happy through music. If you had a bad day, if your girl left you, you lost your job, my job is for 2 hours to make you forget about all of that. And after that, you know, hopefully, you know, you'll make it through. But that's what, to me, the job of a DJ is supposed to be.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.